All right, still keeping our eye on London right now, where on the radio screen you can see things got a little violent today. This is a sort of a global demonstration planned for cities across Europe, for cities across the U.S. We want to get a take on these austerity measures and how they're going down, or more to the point, not going down, because that's what's behind these protests. We've got our Bulls and Bears host, Brenda Butner, joining us, and one of her stars, Toby Smith. Guys, good to have both of you. And Brenda, you were mentioning something classically brilliant, that they are tied on this food issue, right?
Absolutely. Many of the protests overseas are about food. They're not about democracy. Global food prices hit a record last month. We are seeing it in the United States as well. And with oil going up, with the issue of rationing in Japan, and with a terrible drought in Texas, we are only going to see food prices continue to climb.
So you see austerity measures in the face of that. These guys are saying, no, not here.
Absolutely.
Toby, what do you make of that?
Well, up 61% from the bottom of 08 food prices are, and if you look at
Since
it...
when, Toby, the bottom of what?
The bottom of 2008. That was sort of the low end. If you look at it just as the common man, as you go lower in the income world across the world, the higher those, the more impact those food prices, gasoline prices have. And London is sort of intriguing because this is the great experiment. It's a mishmash of literally 14, 15 different cultures in the greater London area. And they're coming from their parents and from their people outside London and saying, hey, guys, you don't know how good you have it. We're dying here, and this food price conundrum now is sort of being blamed on the Fed and money and all that stuff. But I'll tell you, it's more about lack of food.
But Brenda, as I was looking at this earlier, now looking at it now, it gets increasingly violent there. This is London. This is a rich city. This is England, by and large, a city that has bounced back stronger than many since the financial meltdown, and they're whacking the crap.
But they are, what's going on in London is going on across cities in the United States. Basically, what we're used to getting, the privileges that we benefit from, are being taken away. They have to be, because there have to be spending cuts. But people are so used to being on the dole, as they call it in London, to having free college, and those benefits are being taken away. When they're being taken away, when you've expected them much of your life, it gets very violent, even in a democracy.
And Brenda knows London Wells is a former Oxford Rhodes Scholar, and she doesn't talk about that much. She tries to be a person, a woman of the people, but she's not. Tobin, I'm wondering about how this extends to Wisconsin, what was going on, and as Brenda touched on, this notion of people feeling that governments are taking it out, at least the public workers do, on them. And that this extends more to public workers than reflective of all the citizens of all these states and countries.
Right. Well, one person's austerity is another person's, benefit reduction. You could probably make the argument, Neil, that in many states, of the United States, for instance, California, 40 or 50% of the income has come from 1% of the population. And I would argue that this concentration of income tax at the top 1% is not sustainable. And what's really happening is that since 5 or 6% of people almost pay all the bills, those 5 or 6% of the people are saying, enough. And why don't we cut out things that we could never afford, or let's spread the cost to the other 95% of Americans. And, that's the biggest problem we have right now. We're going over a cliff. Incomes at the top go up and down a lot, and you can't make a budget based on 5% of the people paying all of the taxes.
Could I ask you something, Brenda, then? When we look at these crowds, the thing the media will tend to do, to look at like when we see the world, WTO meetings and the like, that we would say, all right, these are angry people, but are they represent people, or are these just public workers, union workers out in force that could be skewing this, or what?
No, that's a very good point. I mean, these have obviously been well organized, but then you see when they start to get violent, you see that there is actual rage and emotion there. Again, it's based on, you're taking away something from me, something that is really a privilege.
That I feel entitled to.
Yes, that they
feel
feel
it's interesting, guys. Tunisia, they lived for a long time with a dictatorial ruler. But it's when food prices got out of whack that it got out of whack. Right?
That's so true. It's not about democracy necessarily, or capitalism, or anything. When you can't put rice on the table or food on the table, that's when you riot.
Go ahead, Toby.
And
Finish that thought.
they did a correlation study, said that in as poorer countries, this price rise has been 100% correlated with the rise in demonstrations and rise of, they call it civil unrest. Not hard to figure out, Neil. If your family's not eating well and you were used to having some more of a diet, this is the first level. This goes, this eliminates all the esoteric stuff. This is the real world.
All right, guys, thank you both very, very much. As they were speaking, we're getting some breaking news on Newt Gingrich is about to take the podium in Iowa there. Some very big news right after this.
He is playing a major leadership role, so I'm delighted to be back.